Toss a coin to your witcher, O Valley of Plenty, O Valley of Plenty. Oh.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So we're back with another episode of The Witcher, episode 3. Last time on The Witcher, last episode was a Yennefer focused episode. We had pretty much our introduction to Yennefer's backstory to some extent. Not entirely sure how accurate that is to the novels. I don't believe we ever got into that. I mean, we ever got into that in the video games. And some of you have commented that the books hint at it, but they're very vague with her backstory, but never really going too much in depth, right? But I will say that it was one of my favorite episodes, where it's the very first season, and as I've said before, it's going to be about world building and learning about all these new characters that we're going to be following for hopefully several seasons. The previous episode, in episode 1, it was Geralt to some extent learning, learning another lesson in terms of, having to make a choice, right? And we lost Renfri, sadly, because I did like the character and the actress, and of course their swordplay at the very end of the first episode. But in the second episode, it was less action focused and more on backstory, telling us about the history of the continent and how humans essentially stole it from the elves. And Geralt's advice to them was to move elsewhere. That seems to be his answer for everything. But eventually, you're going to get to a point where you have no choice but to stand and fight, right? Where Yennefer is concerned, I believe I mentioned it last episode as well, is that while I understand, and I think maybe that was one of the points of the episode, that while you sympathize with her, but at the same time, you need to understand that she's not necessarily a great person. She has a good heart, but when it comes down to choosing between herself and another, odds are she will, in all likeliness, choose herself. Tessaya seems to have been manipulating her to some extent, at least at the end. I'm not sure if she knew at the very beginning, but she seems to have been manipulating her to some extent at the very beginning, to get information that she wants from Istred. But she sacrificed, I believe, 3 of the other sorceresses in training to kind of act as a conduit for magic. The question as to why those 3 are not Yennefer, right, or any of the others that are there, still remains. Unless she knew from the beginning that, okay, she does need some of them to actually ascend, and the others she can easily discard. She did hint at that in her discussion with Yennefer, where she said she referred to them as us, right? We are consumed by our emotions, and it seemed as it would appear as though those are the kind of sorceresses that she actually wants, because I imagine that since they're using chaos as a conduit for magic, then having strong emotions kind of lends itself to that, right? So she kind of compared herself to Yennefer in that one scene there, and that is, I suspect they are very alike in many ways in terms of their thirst for knowledge and for power. And I wouldn't be surprised if she had a similar background as Yennefer. Yennefer's dad, of course, sold her for 4 marks, which, we now know that he may not be her dad. She said that she was part elf. Her dad was supposedly an elf, but that could have just been a lie to get Esther to give her what she needed. So I'm not even sure if that's the entire truth. But at the end of it, Yennefer is still there. I imagine she's going to continue her training with Tessaya here. We did catch up with Cirilla, who found a temporary safe haven, which was short-lived, and that, of course, went to hell when the Nilfgaardians found and attacked the camp and killed the persons that she was with. I feel nothing for them, because they were obviously not... I don't know. I want to say they weren't great persons because of how the mother was treating the I guess the dwarf or whatever. She was treating him as a slave essentially, and but at the same time her son seemed to be indifferent, right? He was the one who spotted Ciri initially, and he treated her with kindness, and he wanted to be a knight and all of that. So it's this world, man. It's this world. Nothing is ever black and white. There are always shades of gray. No one is inherently just good, and no one is inherently bad. At least not yet that we know of right now at this point in time. But there's always some good in the bad, and you know, it was unfortunate that he died. I wouldn't have minded if he ended up being Ciri's companion, right? Until she finds Geralt. But her companion appears to be this young elf, who we now know is an elf. He revealed that at the very end of the last episode, when she saw his ears. So we now have elves in the mixture here. They seem to be scattered about. Of course, the human history books suggest that they're living in the mountains in their golden palace, which is in fact not what actually happens. So again, human lies. And we did meet Jaskier, of course, and I've got to say, I'm very impressed with his singing. The song kind of stuck. The song got stuck in my head at the end of the last episode, and I just kept singing it over and over again. After I found myself singing it afterwards. So they found themselves a great actor who, I mean, that's not always the case. I don't know how much of that is his performing, but I believe it is. But he has a fantastic voice and necessary, right? He needs to be a bard, so I suppose they knew what they were doing casting him, but fantastic job. So we're following continuously. We're now continuing with Geralt on his adventure, and hopefully Ciri has better luck finding him this episode than she did the last. So let's get started.
It comes on the full moon to feed. That's what Ma used to say. When a wolf
a different Witcher. That's not Geralt's medallion.
When it's big enough.
Ah, damn.
That babe. I swear, Witcher, that's what got me. I swear I saw it. I swear by Ma's grave I saw it.
But from the look of his emblem, he's also from the School of the Wolf, right? I know a lot of the schools were created in the games. I'm not sure which ones were from the books and which weren't. I believe the beer was created for the game, but he's from the same school as Geralt, I suspect. His eyes are black, so he's already took some potion. That's not a werewolf. Definitely not a werewolf. Oh. Geralt keeping himself busy.
A friend of yours came through here last month, headed for Temeria.
Friend.
Another Witcher.
Bless that prick with my fullest efforts too, and he
What's in
did all.
Temeria?
Do you not just hear me talking?
Shouldn't you know when someone's pretending?
It's got a pest problem. A few miners rounded up 3,000 Orins to have it killed. Your boy took the coin and ran.
You didn't kill it.
I'll be back with payment in a few days. If anything happens to my horse.
You don't scare me.
Really? You should be
Point me to
scared.
Temeria.
Anything happens to Roach. Did she say the other Witcher? She said he took the money and ran, so he didn't kill the creature. seems unusual. I mean, from what I understand, most witchers kind of have a sense of pride in their work. They don't just run away.
Years of attacks by this creature, and the king does nothing. We must force his hand.
They're not going to pay another witcher to kill it, though. That's for sure.
Refuse to
Unless he comes back with proof that it's
What are we
dead.
gonna do? We've got to move on.
In Nilfgaard, the king diddled whores while his subjects starved. Then someone came. The usurper, and he rallied the people. And they took back what was theirs! I say we follow the lead!
Great plan.
Another fucking Witcher! Your kind already swindled us once.
I take payment after the job is done. And for a third of the price. An apology. From my guild to yours.
Hey, it's a good deal. What did that? Magic.
You can put down your sword. I'm not here to hurt you.
Says the witch hiding in the woods.
Sorceress.
Witch.
Same thing. Who might you be?
Triss Merigold.
Ah,
I serve King
Triss.
Foltest.
So he makes the show of kicking me out. Then sends his errand girl.
2,000 orens if you can tell me what exactly killed these people.
Alright, we get to see some of Geralt's skills. It's not something we saw in the first episode when he was tracking. I was hoping we'd see that, so maybe we will here. Kneel down. Blood. Eyes gouged out. Ah. Which I didn't run. Killed it.
His heart's missing along with his liver. Only one creature I know is that picky and eater. A Striga.
For Striga's old wives' tales.
They're very rare. The only way to make one is through a curse.
Okay. So the court. I guess this is where she changes.
What do you want?
Remember that scared girl who tumbled at your feet in this cave? Totally unaware of her power. I want to go back home to Adrian and never be her again.
There is not a person alive that does not look into the mirror and see some deformity. Except for us. We remain. Look. You can free the victim in the mirror forever.
I don't know where to begin.
The Witcher's theory is nonsense. Princess Ada was the people's angel. Who'd wish to murder her?
What about her lover?
Seditious rumors. Idle courtesans trading out boredom for jealousy.
Call her a unicorn if you'd like to. She grew inside Ada, feeding on her petrified womb.
Have you no respect?
Mutating. Growing for years, till she got so hungry, she was forced to slither out. Rotten mutton.
Enough. Your Highness?
Leave.
That's more like it.
You learned that your sister was murdered, and you didn't even flinch. But the moment I mentioned the girl's father... Well, you never married.
You do.
Between you and me. Who is the Striga's father?
Don't tell me he is.
ambitious mage wants to be signed anywhere south of Sodden. Nilfgaard needs correcting.
Send Yennefer.
Perhaps we consider sending someone there with a bit more spine. Stregobor, did you have anyone in mind?
The only thing Sintra hates more than mages is elves.
Yennefer's of
Sure, Tissaia knows about this.
Quarter elf.
So he's Fringula's uncle.
Let the chapter vote then. I'll even recuse myself. All in favor of Yennefer to Nilfgaard instead of Fringilla.
You've served the family for decades. Was Sansa involved in dark sorcery of any kind?
No.
Someone cursed the
Of course
kid.
not. What was your relationship to Ada?
I like to think that she saw me as a confidant.
And I don't believe it was the king that did it.
There's only one wrinkle, though.
But he seems awfully defensive of the king before, as opposed to now.
Your scent was on her sheets.
Geralt?
Old ones. And new ones.
What would I be doing in a dig? Foltest had no right! He seduced Ada! Abused his position!
So he loved her, and then when he
always
found
nagging
out
over
about the relationship, he cursed the kid to
Always
get back at
nagging.
the king.
But he didn't love her. He spoiled Ada with his seed. He refuses to kill this Striga. He lies to his people. And yet you wag your finger in my face.
If you wanted
You're
him
no
to
more
suffer,
innocent.
You could have just exposed the affair.
And hurt Ada. Never.
All for revenge because...
Yenna. Yenna, what are you doing?
I'm doing what you've done. I have my father sign this deed declaring me his natural-born daughter and not an elven bastard.
Do you really think this slip of paper will fool the chapter? Yenna!
Get your hands away from me!
It was a test. Okay, it was an idiotic manipulation. Forgive me.
Yeah, but
Can
now
your
you
apology save me from
ruined
Nilfgaard?
her.
Take me to Ada.
I'm sorry, I had no way of knowing how the information would be used.
But he knew it would be used, though.
Oh, so we're pretending your precious rectress never ordered you to spy on me?
They both were.
I can fix this.
I will not be schooled by a man who pimps the world as some romantic adventure. My world is cruel and predictable. You enter, you survive, you die.
He's not wrong, she's not wrong, but no one deserves or is owed power. It's not how it works. I agree with her that you have to seize it, but you're certainly not owed it.
You claim to be quite the artist. Prove it.
The chapter will have my head.
Do they already have your cock? Leave my eyes. These as well.
No. No. Come back here.
Shut up.
Please. You'd leave a man bound to die in such indignity?
Not a man.
My thoughts exactly. Didn't kill him? Spoke too soon. I thought this was gonna be a quick magic spell or something. promise he can't kill her, or he's not trying to kill her. Can't kill her. I don't know if this is worth it, man. He may just have to kill her. She's too strong. Oh, God. I've never seen these before. Where is daylight? Alright. It's time. No, you don't. Smart. It's done. Rough night, man. Rough night. I thought he would have needed to do the Elven chant. Or maybe that part was already done, but she needed to stay outside of the crypt. Both reborn.
Yennefer of Vengerberg.
My apologies, Your Excellence. Please allow me to remove this misguided girl.
What sort of a king refuses a dance with one of his subjects? Vengerberg. Are you aware that I'm in the market for just such a mage?
On your lead, Your Excellence.
Oh, I haven't seen Ciri this entire episode. Calling to her.
Ciri! Ciri! Ciri!
What the hell? Wake up. Alright, so now we have our third episode of The Witcher. Another fantastic episode. Of course, the standout being this this hunt for the Striga. And I keep going back to the video games because it feels as though this is just ripped straight out of one of the contracts that you just come upon traveling through the continent. So love the episode. The introduction of another Witcher, which was a pleasant surprise. One of the few things, again, not coming from the books, I'm not sure how many Witchers there are in the novels themselves, but come from the games, the Witchers are of course scarce, but I do know the games take place somewhere much later after the novels, right? So I wasn't quite certain how many Witchers we would see in the series versus the game. Whether if there were more Witchers alive before, which I suspect there were. But in the games, the Witchers are scarce. We do come across a few, but not many of them. So I'm glad to see that they're not shying away from that, and we are seeing other Witchers. Although, albeit this one appears to have come from the same school as Geralt, so I do hope we get to see others. And again, the book readers, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. I'm not certain how many Witcher schools were created for the games versus how many were in the novels themselves. I believe the School of the Manticore and the School of the Bear were created for the games. So correct me if I'm wrong. And the wolf and the cat and the griffin were in the novel. So again, correct me if I'm wrong. But it would be cool to see some of those other Witchers throughout the series. It doesn't have to be this season, of course, but maybe next season and wherever. But the more Witchers, the better. Right, so again, that was one of my favorite parts, being introduced to another Witcher, although this one tragically died at the hand of the Striga, which I guess suggests that not all Witchers are equal. So I mean, Geralt fared better, but Strigas are obviously very powerful creatures, and he was given the wrong information initially, and I guess he wasn't able to do due diligence in doing his investigations before taking the hunt. He just went in thinking it was a Striga, so thinking it was basically a werewolf is what I'm guessing they called it something else, but I'm guessing it was a werewolf. So he thought it was a different creature, so he may have gone preparing for something else and not expecting a Striga. And of course, the king in this whole mess, he's no saint, and neither was his guard, who fell in love with the princess, and he got jealous because she had a relationship with her brother, which again is also wrong. So no one is blameless here, but I don't think the right decision was to curse the princess, and it then passed on to her child. But the king was still a pretty shitty king. He was still treating the people poorly, and the people were dying. And he refused to have his men act and kill the creature, whatever it might have been, right? Because he suspected that it may have been his daughter, but he made a lot of bad choices, right? So he was no saint in all of this. There were no good guys here. I suppose, I don't know if I were in Geralt's shoes, if I would have, because he almost died. He almost died. I don't know if I would have made the choice to try to save her. I would have maybe tried to initially, but after getting my ass kicked all over the place, I would have just, because he had the option. At the point where she knocked him down, his sword fell. He could have reached for his sword, and he could have perhaps taken her out, but he chose not to. And he trapped them both inside the crypt and tried to fight it out until sunrise. So it was a fantastic hunt from beginning to end. The characters involved in the storyline and the conflict, right? The conflict that was there. No good guys really, or bad guys. Well, there are a lot of bad guys, but everyone had, everyone contributed to the events that led to the princess being cursed in some way or form. So that was what it was fantastic to watch that storyline play out. I hope we get a lot more of that. Because that gray area is what makes the Witcher world so, as interesting as it is, whether you're reading the books or playing the video games. There are no heroes. We did catch up with Yennefer at court, of course, and she finally got around to doing, I suppose, the transformation. I initially assumed it was something that she would have performed on herself, and I mean, when she was looking in the mirror with Tissaia, I thought Tissaia was going to be the one to actually do the spell, but apparently not. When they introduced this guy who gives everyone a makeover, then I realized, okay, that it's going to be him. And it's interesting how the politics of this all plays out, in that in that the place where these mages are in society, in this society here, right? Based on what Stregobor says, I don't particularly take anything he says at face value, but in this respect, he explained as much that the mages were put in, or the Brotherhood was created, and I assume the mages are assigned to kings throughout the continent for the same reason, to prevent kings from going to war, to help them to solve problems so that they wouldn't have to go to war with neighboring countries. And it's just interesting to see how that relationship develops. Of course, not all the kings are good. One of the reasons why Yennefer didn't want to go to Nilfgaard is because the Nilfgaardian king is just known for whoring and sleeping with his sorceress and nothing much else, and doesn't listen to her guidance. I do wonder why all the sorcerers, why they're all women and none are actually males. I assumed initially that that's what Estrid was, but apparently not. And I mean, the council itself, right? All the mages in the Brotherhood, I believe Tesseia is the only woman. I may have to check the scene back, but when they had their little gathering there, she was the only woman on the council. So why is it that there aren't other males? Oh, I could be wrong, because Musak was with Queen Calanthe. So I guess male mages are there, but here with Yennefer's group, it seems to be all female. And Fringilla, of course, it appears, has only been getting by on nepotism, with her uncle being a member of the court, and he's trying to spare her from going in certain areas, but they were readily, willing to send Yennefer there because I suppose because of her appearance. And I don't know, I'm torn where Yennefer is concerned. Her discussion with Estrid, they both made valid arguments, right? And I mentioned it before earlier, before the reaction to the episode, that Yennefer is not necessarily inherently a good person. She will do good if it serves her purpose, and that may help someone. But first and foremost, I think she looks out for herself. And the question lies whether or not that makes her selfish, or is she just, is she just a creation of the environment in which she was brought up in, and does that make it just, right? Because this world did create her, and she was mistreated, she was beaten, forced to sleep outside with the pigs by her dad, so she's a product of the environment that she was brought up in. Now, does that in fact justify the decisions that she makes and will make going forward, though? Because now through her eyes, as she said, in her world it's cruel. You live, you survive, and you die. That's it. There's no room for love or compassion or the rose-colored lens that Estrid appears to be seeing the world through. And I genuinely believe that he fell in love with her, and to some extent I believe she did as well, but I think she did before she completely understood what love really meant. He would have been her first. So some of the more intricate details surrounding, being in love, she didn't completely understand. She does now. So she's learning quite quickly. She's learning quite quickly. And as she said, she views his world as, slow suicide, because he just wants to live out his life doing this one thing, and she wants power. She seeks power. I was surprised at the end there where Tesseia attempted to block her from dancing with the king, because, and even if she did it, I think she didn't want to go against the council's ruling. But I think somewhere deep down she's pleased with what Yennefer did. I think part of her is pleased with what she did. And the cost, the cost of that beauty that she now has, she can never have children. So whether or not that is equivalent, I'm not a woman, it's tough to say. I myself have a particularly different perspective in terms of whether I want to have children or not. So it's to each his own. So it's interesting. I guess, from her perspective, it was a worthwhile sacrifice, right? In order for her to live the life that she wants to live, and not to be, I don't know. I found myself wondering about the kings that she was being sent to. We haven't seen an Nilfgaardian king as yet, so I don't want to believe that he's a cruel person. But we have seen a Nilfgaard army, and they're not nice people. They don't take prisoners. They did attack Sintra and wipe everyone out. Although this timeline where Yennefer is in is before that battle. So I'm not sure if this is the same king or if it's a different king that attacks Sintra later on. But I can understand her not wanting to actually go there. And of course, we finally met Triss Merigold. For those of you who have played or not played the game, Triss was always that character that I preferred. Again, after having played through the game at least twice, on my third playthrough now, and who's to say whether her characteristics will be the same in the games as it is in this adaptation? But I always preferred her character to Yennefer's. Yennefer comes off as very selfish and self-absorbed, and you're seeing that play out here. The only difference is we now have reason for her, for her personality. So we have a background, we have a backstory for Yennefer, and we now understand why she makes some of the decisions that she makes. So she's in fact quarter elf. So I suppose, does that give her an advantage in using magic? I suppose more than most persons would have. So there's that. It's an interesting to know. Right? I didn't know that about her before. I don't believe that was ever mentioned in the game, so I didn't know that. So I'm learning as the story unfolds. But I'm indifferent about Triss Merigold's character so far. We didn't really see a whole lot of her. She's definitely expressing the same kind of compassion that you expect from Triss, in actually reaching out to Geralt initially to actually save the princess rather than murder her, rather than just outright kill her. And she was willing to pay him her own coin to get it done. So in terms of her portrayal of the character, it's on point. So only time will tell, as we are introduced more to other characters and how she interacts with other characters, we'll see. But so far, she's doing a fantastic job. I will say though that the performance in this episode that completely blew me away was Yennefer's, right? And apart from the grotesque scene of her spine being reshaped and the nudity, her acting was just her acting throughout that scene was phenomenal, right? You feel the pain and the torment as her her posture was being reshaped, and the scene was just phenomenal. It was well done, it was extremely well done, and hopefully we'll get more of that throughout this season. So there we have it, episode 3 of The Witcher. I am thoroughly enjoying the series so far. Be sure to post down below, let me know what your thoughts are on this episode. Hit like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.